What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Elliot, and this is MovieFiles. Today we are here to discuss a new Netflix series brought to us from the same creators who brought us the hit series Smallville, and the co-writers of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2 comes a new series focusing on everyone's favorite goth who is obsessed with death, Wednesday. Should you all be excited for this coming-of-age supernatural horror comedy? Is it worth checking out? We'll be discussing that and so much more in today's spoiler-free series review. But before we get into all the details, if you all haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. That way you can stay up to date with all my Netflix content. You can also give your boy a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. All those links can be found in the description of this very video. Which, speaking of this video, if you enjoyed today's review, make sure you're giving this video a thumbs up as well as sharing it. But more importantly, sharing your thoughts in the comments. Are you a Wednesday Addams fan? Are you an Addams Family fan? And were you excited for this series? And more importantly, once you've seen this series, which will be available on Netflix on such a perfect date, November 23rd, which happens to be a Wednesday. Let me know your thoughts on the series, your pros, your cons, favorite episodes, favorite characters. Do you want a season 2? Let's discuss it all in the comments below. So with all that being said, if this is your first time hearing about the Wednesday series and you're not too familiar about what it's about, let me let you all know who's behind this show and what you all can expect. Alfred, Gough, and Miles Millar are the showrunners and are teaming up with Tim Burton, who's responsible for directing the first 4 episodes. Now, this series focuses on Wednesday Addams and her years as a high school student at Nevermore Academy, where she attempts to master her psychic powers, stop a monstrous killing spree of the town's citizens, and solve the supernatural mystery that has affected her family for over 25 years, all while navigating her new relationships. So let's kick off this review by talking about the style and the tone of this series. Now, as I had mentioned, Tim Burton directs the first 4 episodes of this new series, which means he's responsible for setting the tone and the mood for this series. And I'll be honest with you all, Tim Burton hasn't directed a TV show in over 20 years, and in my personal opinion, hasn't really made a good live action movie in quite a long time. I say all that to say this: I really enjoy what he brought to the show. You can definitely tell that Tim Burton is in his wheelhouse when it comes to him directing these first 4 episodes. I thought that he did such a good job of paying homage to what came before and giving us different nods and Easter eggs to the previous Addams Family lore, especially if you're a kid from the 90s like myself, seeing different callbacks from those films, but also different callbacks and shades of some of his past work that I'm a fan of. You can definitely see some Beetlejuice vibes within these first 4 episodes, a little bit of Sleepy Hollow, and especially when we get to Nevermore Academy and that school environment, it definitely reminded me of his film Miss Peregrine's Home of Particular Children. And the thing that I also loved about Tim Burton handling this character Wednesday Addams, it allows him to tap into his favorite character traits. Wednesday Addams can be weird and strange, and he gets to play with these monsters and creatures. So overall, again, just setting the tone and the mood for the first 4 episodes, I thought he did a great job, and it's honestly some of the best direction I've seen from him in a very long time. And ultimately, at the end of the day, you can tell that he's just having fun. And on that note of how good the first 4 episodes are with Tim Burton directing it, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but you can tell that there's definitely a shift in the tone once he hands off the rest of the series to the other directors, which again, we'll talk a little bit about later. But I definitely want to say, if you're a Tim Burton fan, you're going to enjoy what he brought to the table. Which also, speaking of Tim Burton, I had to mention it because it's a frequent collaborator that he works with. Danny Elfman does compose the theme of this show, and I thought he did a good job of doing so. So a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, the direction, the cinematography, the composers, the production are pretty top notch, which also brings me to this point. When I saw the trailer for this a couple months ago, I was very intrigued, but I was saying to myself, who is this show for? Who is the target audience? So to answer that question, I would say I feel as though with the death sequences, the violence the show has, it doesn't have like sex scenes or curse words, but I would say 15 and up would be kind of the range that I would say would be equipped to handle some of the more serious, mature nature that the show has to offer. And I would compare it to Netflix's Sabrina, which I was actually a fan of. If you've seen Sabrina, you would like this show. And also, if you're a fan of Wednesday Addams, you would like this show. But let's pivot over to the actual performances. And when getting into the performances here, I'll say that no one really blew me away from the main cast, but that doesn't take away from the solid performances that we get through the ensemble cast. There's a lot of characters that we're messing around with in this series, and there definitely are some standouts. For example, you have Emma Myers, who plays Enid, who is Wednesday's colorful roommate. She is literally the complete opposite of Wednesday Addams. She is very happy, she likes to have fun, and she is someone that grows on you. And I like how the show develops their friendship. And also, going back to her as an individual character, she has her own personal arc that she has in this show and has her own little side plot that I thought was pretty satisfying. So I was a fan of her. Also, another performance that comes to mind is Gwendoline Christie, who plays Principal Weems, who is just in about every single episode. And I wouldn't say she necessarily has an entire backstory, but you get to get enough from the story and you get to understand her motives. You get to understand why this school is so important for her and what it means to her. And also, Gwendoline Christie, she's great in everything I've seen her in, so she's a standout. And also, I have to mention her because if you're a 90s kid like me, she's my Wednesday Addams, and I'm referring to Christina Ricci, who plays Professor Thornhill. I really enjoyed what she brought to the table. So if you think that she's just a glorified cameo, that is not the case. She's very heavily involved in the story, and I thought she did a good job. But before we get into my MVP, the scene stealer herself, I gotta talk about the actual performance and the role that the Addams family plays in the series. Without giving too much away, let's talk about them briefly. Now, it is important to note that this show is called Wednesday, so don't expect them to pop up in every single episode. They're considered to be guest stars who appear at the very start of the show, and then they reappear a little bit later in the series, more on a family focus episode when they get to dedicate time with them, which I thought was fine. Now, as far as the performances go, I really enjoyed Catherine Zeta-Jones as Morticia, and also Fred Armisen, who plays Uncle Fester. And I thought for the most part they were the best standouts of the family, and not taking away anything from Gomez and their little son, but they just weren't given as much. So again, just a forewarning, the Addams family, they're in the show, but they're not in every single episode. Again, there is one episode that you get to spend time with the family and get to see their dynamic and their chemistry and all that stuff. But I just want to let you all know, Addams family are not heavily involved, but when they are on screen, I enjoyed them for the most part. But now we have to talk about the MVP. And actually, before we get to the MVP, someone that actually stole a lot of moments for me emotionally, which is crazy to say, Thing. If you are a fan of Thing, which is obviously the hand from the Addams family, Thing is awesome. He is the right-hand man of Wednesday Addams in the show, and surprisingly has a lot to do and has an emotional moment in the show, which is crazy to think of, but shout out to Thing, who was fantastic. But now we have to talk about the MVP who carries this show on every single level. I am talking about Jenna Ortega, who is having herself a hell of a year. I have been following Jenna Ortega since seeing her in Iron Man 3 and Insidious 2, and then now building out her career. The word that comes to mind when describing her performance in this role is commitment. She truly embodies the character from start to finish. You know who Wednesday Addams is by the end of this series. She can sometimes be emotionless. She can be heartless. She can be extremely cold, which for a film or a short story or an animated type of film, that can work in small doses. But then if you consider to put that character in a 8-episode series, it can be dry, it can be stale, it can get a little bit boring. But those words are what I would never say to describe the performance that we get from Jenna, because she gives you so much in this role. When it comes to her facial expressions, her tone, her personality, and the show's ability to have her in these situations with this school, with the murders that are going on, the mystery that she has to solve, and her coming of age story that allows you to see, to have a friend or two, or what it looks like to have her dive into her family trauma and her family history, as well as what does it look like if Wednesday Addams has a romance. She has someone that she's interested in, and that's what this show gives us. And I thought, again, Jenna is giving you everything in this role. And also just going back to the character of Wednesday Addams and what she's able to bring as far as nuance to this character. The series allows you to see different sides of Wednesday Addams as the story goes on, but also doesn't abandon who she is from a character that's literally been around from 6 to 60. So this is a character that's been around for a very long time. And I thought that Jenna, she might be my number one as far as my favorite portrayals that I have personally seen. But again, going back to her, she carries this show on her shoulders and she literally eats up every scene that she in. I really hope that she gets some type of Emmy nomination. That's how good she is in this role. And for me, I think that this is her best role to date. Now, again, she has been in Hollywood for just a few years, right? And she's never had this opportunity to lead something like this. And I thought that she did such a great job. Again, I think she's number one for me, man. Again, Christina Ricci is always going to have that nostalgia, but when you see this series, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But shift and let's talk a little bit about the story and the themes that we have here. Now, I'm going to just say this right now. I was personally shocked by the direction and the themes that this show decided to tackle. I say that because without going into details or spoilers, yes, Wednesday has to uncover the variety of different students that she's interacting with at Nevermore, from vampires to werewolves to shapeshifters to sirens. She gets involved with this murder mystery and how it connects to her family. But in doing so, this show addresses a lot of things. Number one, first and foremost, why is there a school for outcasts, right? And the show tackles that theme in regards to who started this school, number one, as well as the show handling discrimination, prejudice behaviors, which I was very surprised with. This show also tackles bullying behavior as well as not judging a book by its cover. And I wasn't expecting to get all that in this type of series based on the trailer. And I thought it handled all those themes. Those are just a few to name. They handle it pretty appropriately in my opinion. And I'll be honest with you all, as far as wrapping up my positives, the show starts off good, but it wasn't great. And it didn't have anything that hooked me. But I'll say once we get to episodes 3 and 4, that's to me when the show found its stride. So those are my main positives. Transitioning over to my criticism. So I just mentioned how the show has these themes and these stories that I didn't expect to be this thought-provoking, this deep. But I also would have to say that one of the criticisms for me is the show does suffer from too many characters and too many stories. And we didn't have enough time to flesh out all the characters, to flesh out all these stories, which made the experience a little bit unbalanced. Now, without giving any spoilers away, I'll use this for example. There's a particular plot in a character by the name of Crackstone who is like a very important figure to this small community, and we would focus on that for a little bit, and then we wouldn't hear anything about that story for like 2 or 3 episodes. Then we would switch over to, okay, there's these murders, there's this mystery, there's this monster on the loose. We would focus on that, and then we would abandon that plot to then hop over to the high school love story, the high school drama. So all those different plots and all those different characters, it led to this kind of emotional roller coaster in regards to my interest. It's like, oh, that's very interesting. I like what they're doing there. But we would go to this high school stuff like, wait, can we go back here? So again, I feel like the show lacked focus at points, and I wish it would focus more on the interesting aspects more so than these subplots that really didn't add up to much for me, because I didn't find it to be all that interesting. And on that very note, I'm very aware that I'm not the quote-unquote target audience per se for this series, but even that being said, there's still some criticisms, and when we focus on the high school drama. Now, of course, I went to high school. I can relate to those elements, but I can also have my criticism, and I feel like when we got to those beats, it just wasn't all that interesting, and everything surrounding those beats and the supporting characters like Bianca and Tyler and Xavier, some of those plots to me just felt very uninteresting compared to Wednesday on a murder mystery trying to figure out this monster and how it ties to her family. So that's something that comes to mind. And I also found, going back to just those characters, I mentioned Xavier, I mentioned Bianca and Tyler and his father and all that stuff. Those characters to me, very one note and just kind of there at points, right? Which brings me to one of my biggest criticisms in this show. Whenever we would focus on those side characters, those supporting characters, and when Wednesday wasn't involved in those scenes, I checked out, because again, I didn't find those characters to be all that interesting when they weren't on screen with Wednesday Addams. And it doesn't happen a lot, but it happens enough where it's just like, oh, this is boring. Where's Wednesday? Can we get back to her? So that's really kind of my biggest criticism. And wrapping up my criticism as far as my last points, I had mentioned that it has so many stories and the lack of focus at points, because I found when Tim Burton, who directed the first 4 episodes, when he when he finished his 4-episode run and he handed it off to the other 2 directors who directed episodes 5 and 8, to me, I saw the dip in quality regarding the storytelling, and the direction wasn't as strong as what we got from those first 4 episodes. So that's something that stood out to me. And one more thing, not a big criticism, but something that definitely I had to mention. We have monsters and creatures, and when it comes to the visual effects of what those monsters look like, they were flat out bad. I'm sorry to say, but I found the CGI to be very bad. And also, we get a couple action sequences, they weren't handled that great. So small little criticism, but something that definitely comes to mind. So before we get into my overall thoughts, and if you should watch Wednesday on November 23rd, if you all are here, thank you so much for watching this review. Just a friendly reminder to like, share, comment, and of course subscribe. Overall, if you are a fan of this character, I don't see how you won't enjoy Jenna's character and more importantly, her performance. Also, if you like a good murder mystery, it checks those boxes mixed with a solid coming-of-age story about being yourself and surrounding yourself around like-minded individuals, and has some good messages throughout. And just for about every demographic and every culture and every age, I do have some issues when it comes to the characters and the plot and stuff of that nature, but I'm pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this series. And personally, I watched it in like less than 24 hours. So should you watch this series? The answer to that question, yes, I had a good time. It has its shortcomings, but overall I had a good time with the series, and I would be down for a season 2. But the question is, are you down for a season 2 after you've watched it? Let me know your pros, your cons, favorite moments, favorite characters, favorite episodes. And again, do you want to see more from this world, and in particularly Jenna Ortega? Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. I plan on recording a ending explain and kind of giving you all my thoughts of what a season 2 could look like. So keep an eye out for that video. But again, I recommend you all give this a watch. And again, it comes out on November 23rd on a Wednesday. That is just perfect marketing if you ask me. So again, thank you all for watching this review. Appreciate you all. Again, just a reminder to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You all have been awesome. Hope you stay safe. As you can see on the screen now, come and join the community. Check out my other reviews for Netflix series. Check out my most recent review, and we'll catch you all on the next breakdown.